creature that's been alive for over 3,000 years is in this town, and it's brought death with it. We've got to run it down.
Cinematic Fantastic.
Klaatu, Barada, Nikto.
I'll show you who I am and what I am.
Bitten by a werewolf and lives, becomes a werewolf himself.
Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
Hello and welcome to the Cinematic Fantastic Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Weatherford.
And your other host, William Weatherford.
Get ready for opinions, dad jokes,
and bad jokes
as we watch and review sci-fi and fantasy films from the classics of yesteryear to the new favorites of today. Welcome back, listeners, to episode 39 of Cinematic Fantastic. Tonight we're going to talk about...
a TikTok trend.
No, in a moment. We're going to talk about mainly the movie The Mummy's Tomb, 1942, is that right? 1942?
Yep.
Okay, we're not in 43 yet. I think that we have the next movie to go before we get in 43. Okay, so what Wade was talking about, he said TikTok trend. Let me explain. I'm not a big...
Can you start that as if you said it real quick? As if you brought it up real quick?
William.
Yeah?
I wonder if you know about this TikTok trend going around that has to do with subject matter of our movie.
No, I do not.
It's not where somebody has a challenge for, Lou Gehrig's disease or something where they wrap themselves in toilet paper or gauze or something. It's not anything like about a mummy, but it's called the Pharaoh's Curse. Now, there is supposedly, I don't know if it's from a Mario game or whatever, but it's a game where they have Egyptian kind of music because it's like a sand level or desert level or something, and they play these notes, okay? And
is it a shifting sandland?
It could be. It's highly likely. This sounds really... See, you notice I didn't do a lot of research for this, but I'm just saying I think that you're right. But
yeah, I think I have seen this one before. It's the guy who's blowing cinnamon at him.
Yes, it's these guys that did the cinnamon challenge, and basically it's like, they shouldn't... There's some kind of SpongeBob, I think, episode or something like that where... Or maybe it was it was Cat Dog or some other Nickelodeon cartoon, whatever.
It was not Cat Dog. It was Courage, the Cowardly Dog.
And supposedly they removed a slab from a pharaoh's tomb, and then he got the Pharaoh's curse. And so they kept saying that whoever is doing the challenge where they're spitting the sand out or whatever, the sand quote, that it's the Pharaoh. They'll say something like, shouldn't have removed that slab, eh?
Return the slab.
What?
Return the slab, or suffer my curse.
And then and they'll play the little thing. It's like, and also the one guy was actually, he goes over to a sanitizer thing, and it does the sanitizer pump, and sand comes out of the sanitizer. Yeah, okay, you put it in there,
yeah.
but.
I think it was a tweet that said that was replying upon the clip that said bro got the Pharaoh's curse.
Yeah, supposedly sand coming out of the guy's. It's cinnamon. He's doing the cinnamon challenge, or it looks like sand.
And by
dust.
the way, to clarify two things: one, TikTok challenges don't do literally any challenges. It's literally escalated to the point of theft of bathroom items from schools. So
it's stupid. It's
whatever you do, if you see a child or having a TikTok at all, just at any point.
They shouldn't have them. Yeah, I hate.
They might risk their lives trying to balance on weird things or bridge ledges or do something really stupid. And then secondly, rest in peace Twitter. It's now called X. And tweets are now called X's.
I really don't. Okay.
Best decision by Elon Musk ever, but we're glancing by that.
No. Was that the best decision Elon Musk has ever had? I thought.
No, it's not.
I think the best decision he ever had was I think he put a.
It's flat and generic, and honestly,
it's terrible.
I don't know how it can bounce.
It sounds like a placeholder. Like when you have a placeholder image, and you'll be like, oh, we'll put something in there later. It just seems like somebody took.
It's literally a common font. Is their logo.
I heard that his son. Okay, here's the deal. His son has a really weird. I think his son's name or his daughter's name is pronounced like X or something, but it's the letters are weird and they spell AECA.
XSE12.
Look, I don't know. I didn't do a lot of research on Elon Musk for this episode, but I think his son and his daughter have a weird name and a weird spelling or something, and that's where
he's just that obsessed.
Yeah, what I was going to say is the best thing that he ever did was put a car in orbit, and that's about the height of it. But yeah, I was thinking about the Pharaoh's curse, and removing a slab or doing something that a stupid curse is carried on generations after somebody did something. It's like, this carries on into this movie because, this guy, we've already met him, but this guy, he violates the sanctity of the Pharaoh's tomb or sarcophagus or whatever in Egypt, and then he just goes, okay, bye, and he goes on his merry way. And the next generation
produces a bunch of films.
Yes, and the next generation, the curse is visited upon them, and even people that are tangentially, kind of, sort of not connected to the main person. It's like, did you say hi to somebody when you're walking down the street? Well, the curse is, I'm going to come after them too. Yeah. We'll explain this in detail when we get to the plot. But right now, we're going to talk about the actual movie, The Mummy's Tomb.
Spawned from the depths of doom comes the most fearful monster of the ages to strike with paralyzing terror the despoilers of ancient tombs. Here is new horror by the master of menace, Lon Chaney as the Mummy, with Dick Foran, John Hubbard, Elise Knox, George Zuko, Wallace Ford, Turon Bay, in The Mummy's Tomb.
Or as I describe it, today we're doing the Mummy's Hand DLC, basically.
Right, the Mummy's Hand. It is kind of directly connected to the Mummy's Hand because you have some characters.
It's the Mummy's Hand downloadable content. You buy it for $5 or $6 or $7. You play one. It's an extra little mission, little side quest, and then you're really over with it. It's an extra skin.
Wow. So that kind of encapsulates what you think about this movie, I guess. But
because it feel like it's just the same thing, but they're doing the same thing.
So it's kind of like the Force Awakens, because look, you wait 30 years after the events of the original situation happened, and then the first thing you do when you introduce these old characters that in the case of Star Wars, we really liked them, and then you go, spoiler, killed them off. You get these characters and you bring them back just to kill them.
Just killed them off by, rebooting the entire series. And,
oh my goodness, yeah. Well, there's reboots to be had, but I mean, at least with Mummy's Hand.
But I feel like Force Awakens was handled better. Okay, do you want to start with some of the gripes?
Okay, sure.
First of all, as I described in the last episode, this movie is like a cross between the previous movie and The Ape. Because this is basically, the mummy gets shipped to the US of A and kills people, the movie.
Yeah.
Why?
He's also
Really?
He's a hench person. He's a goon for this guy, Mehmet Bey, played by Turhan Bey, who really, he's great in this. Turhan Bey is great in this. He really is. He does a good job.
But that's basically the same thing they did last time.
Yeah, but okay, but
thing is,
Andoheb, yeah. So wait, that's true. Andoheb was like placing. If you guys haven't seen The Mummy's Hand, definitely go watch it. Watch our previous review on that to get more information on the plot on this. But Andoheb, the priest, didn't he put like Tana fluid or whatever near where he wanted somebody to be killed? Is that right? Am I remembering that wrong or right?
No.
Well, how did he get the mummy Karis, played by Tom Tyler, in that? How did he get him to go kill different people?
He fed him Tana leaves and just said, sick him.
Right. He does that in this movie too. Yeah. But to be honest, I mean, could you really tell that it was Lon Chaney underneath the makeup? I mean, okay. All right, let's put it this way. Okay, let me give my little gripe. In The Wolfman, you see Lon Chaney, and he gets to act with his face, right? He gets to read lines or act, whatever you want to call that. And then they put the wolf makeup on him, and it looks, you can still tell it a little bit that it's Lon Chaney underneath the makeup, but it's a transformation.
And then with Ghost of Frankenstein,
it's half and half.
He is very flat.
But it's half and half. What I'm saying is you can still see Lon Chaney's, I mean, okay, whatever you feel about the acting, you can still see Lon Chaney's face. And then he's got the forehead. So you're like, oh, I can see Lon Chaney's face. In The Mummy, I can't tell that's Lon Chaney whatsoever. Now that's not a oh, wow.
Yeah, the mummy looks terrible.
Well,
like the lower lip, like the patch
Oh,
of clay,
okay.
that nose too, just he looks like a prune.
He does look,
He looks like a
he
prune.
does look like a prune, and even more like a prune than even Boris Karloff did in the original Mummy. I mean, he looked pretty wrinkly. But this one,
Well, yeah, but this dude
He
is a
is.
literal prune. I mean, Tom Tyler was much more suited for the role. But
oh, Tom Tyler's eyes.
literal
Okay,
prune.
let's
Yeah, I mean, we have Jack Pierce on this, but the thing is, Lon Chaney Jr. actually didn't like this movie because
that you could say that about each one of the movies that
And the
any of
makeup
the
didn't look
movies
good on him
that Lon Chaney is in, where he's in makeup. There's always some production note or somewhere he hates it.
He had a love-hate relationship with
Yeah,
Universal
he did. He got
in general.
typecast a little bit, and they wouldn't. If you notice that on the poster it says Lon Chaney. Where's the junior? Right? They never throw out the junior until way later.
And that was when Lon Chaney Jr. was sort of, he sort of also had that against Universal.
He's been compared to his father. They're
even
using
still-
his father's name, right? That's like if you were, if you were Jason Weatherford Jr., right? And they kept saying you were Jason Weatherford and I was dead or something. And so wait, that's very morbid. What I'm trying to say is Lon Chaney was known for playing those roles. If people may be still alive that remembered Lon Chaney movies when they were little, right, at that time, that Lon Chaney Jr. was around. So you have Lon Chaney. They're going to think of his father. But if you put Junior on there, he can kind of carve out his own thing. He can be like known for himself, but it's just he's Lon Chaney. I think he wanted to be known for himself and not necessarily connected to his father too much. He was inspired by his father, but he didn't want to be like dragging that whole legacy around. It's a big pressure on the guy. That's what I was thinking.
I don't care that the fire he, quote, died in last movie distorted his features.
Are you
He
saying
doesn't look so
so
hot.
you're
It doesn't matter
Yeah,
that
okay,
he just
well-
got distorted and so his upper lip and his nose is squashed and stuff.
Is that the
more doesn't
excuse they're
matter.
giving that
Yeah,
his
that's
face
the
looks
excuse.
different? Okay, now wait a minute.
Yes,
They
but
use
he
the
doesn't
do
look
they
so
use the
hot
same
without-
excuse with Frankenstein's monster because he gets his face burned up and horribly scarred as he, quote, dies at the end of Ghost of Frankenstein. Go watch. And it turns him
would
into
think
Bela
so as
Lugosi,
well.
like it shortens him by a foot.
I suspect so.
That's not very nice to Bela Lugosi. That's saying that your face is just a melted, burned up Lon Chaney Jr.
Speaking of which, also for long shots in this movie, we had to do with a stunt double with a rubber mask. You think that looked good? No, it looks like a hobgoblin.
Oh my goodness! Or like a
a
raisin that you put a bunch of flour, like flour powder on.
Because what is his nose doing? Just like that
Okay,
squash? Is he like Pinocchio, but
after
his
we
nose is
finish
tight?
talking about this and everything, I want you to show me. I want to go back and look at the movie again and see if I can pick out the scenes where it's the stunt double. Oh wait, no, in the fire
Wait,
the
did you
fire
do that
scenes they used a
or-
stunt double, right? In some of the fire scenes where they're hitting him, yeah, it looks like a
I'd say
mask,
so.
yes, and it looks bad. But what that tells me is it
doesn't look that
I don't
great
hate the
regardless.
makeup he has. I don't think it does Lon Chaney Jr. I'm going to call him Lon Chaney Jr. any favors. It really doesn't.
But why is that
He's
lower
like,
lip
'cause
just
he's
so
sad. He's just
big
sad
and
mummy.
extended? He's just constantly like.
Well, look.
baby
If you had this
face.
guy,
Why?
okay, this Egyptian guy, all right, controlling your mind and telling you had to go kill certain people, right? And then he's like, fine, I'll do that. But then, and we'll talk about this during the plot part, but he goes like, and then I want you to, this is unrelated, Karis, I want you to go grab me this woman, keep her alive, don't kill. And he's like, I'm not going to kill? And he's like, you got to get this woman that I'm really into.
Carry her with both of your arms.
You're totally
entirely
shriveled arm. Well,
Yeah,
yeah,
because
one of
his
his
right
arms is
arm
shriveled up,
doesn't
and
work.
that. In fact, when some people do the mummy acting or whatever, they like dress up like the mummy and like I'll pretend to be the mummy. They always take their hand and put it all kind of shriveled up against their chest, and they put the other one out and reach out with it. That's the choking hand. That's the choking hand that he would choke out people with, and then he drags a foot behind him. That's the mummy. You always had to drag a foot. There's no, the only time I saw like mummies that were running was in the 1999 The Mummy movie, which is pretty good. And there's some mummy guys that are kind of running after the main character, and the special effects are a little bit dated, for now. But at the time, they were pretty good, and it's fun. It's a really really fun movie. And that's the thing is this movie whereas the previous movie had some fun elements, like it tried to be fun, right? On purpose. especially with Wallace Ford playing Babe. Is it Jansen? He was Babe Jansen.
It was Babe Jansen.
Babe Hansen. That didn't make sense. I think they were like,
movie.
you guys remember that other movie, right? No? You can't go watch it again and you didn't take notes? Okay, great. He's Babe Hansen. Like, what? So, but anyway, at least he was kind of jokey. And Babe Hansen, though, he's an older guy. He's humor. He has no humor. He kind of looks like Theodore Roosevelt. An older Theodore Roosevelt, He's kind of...
But yeah, the mummy is a freaking vegetable. He is a freaking vegetable.
There's no real personality. The only time he really shows personality to me is when Mehmet Bey, played by Turhan Bey, the Egyptian guy, he says, "I want you to go after this woman and go kidnap her and bring her back." And he's like, and you look at Lon Chaney, he's acting though. He's like, "No, bro, no, I'm not. I'm gonna choke you out." He's like, "I'm gonna choke you," and he's like, "No, you're not. You're gonna go get this woman." And he's like, "I'm not gonna do it." And that's the only time you really see him like show any personality, and that's.
Yeah, but it's not like we care.
Do you think it's kind of devolving into it is a grim movie, humorless. It's a humorless movie, but you have to kind of watch. If you're watching it, there's some scenes where you'll be like unintentionally laughing, like with the whole thing where they're like, "I saw this shadow. There's a shadow." I'm like, "Well, let's investigate that. You saw a shadow." Oh.
And then first of all,
right,
look into the right window.
Right.
Wasn't looking into the right window.
I don't remember that.
But speaking of intentionally, to return to a point I made like 8 or 9 minutes
go
ago,
ahead.
It's been delayed a little. This is The Mummy Gets Shipped to the USA and Kills People, the movie. Like, The Mummy doesn't belong in Wisconsin. There are no
I think it's Massachusetts.
What? You would think this place takes place...
Or is it Connecticut? I can't remember. Where is
tomb?
Mapleton? It takes place in the nice town of Mapleton, which has farms in it. It has farms in it. There's horses.
The beautiful
rural, yeah, I love that word.
Rural
Rural,
place.
yeah. It's Mapleton. I don't know.
Hate the word,
I don't know. Where's Mapleton?
But, you would think, based on the title of this movie, that this movie takes place maybe in a tomb. But no, it takes place in America.
Yeah.
It takes place in Merca.
I have one word for you: cash. It costs less money to film on some areas, some locations that Universal already had. They were like, we filmed other movies on these other sets with farms and small towns. Let's use that.
Yeah, and since this is a B movie, they reused a lot of different sets. And just, I do feel like it's sort of harmonizing more with the ape in my mind, because you have, of course, many scenes in this movie that are reminiscent of that.
A creature in the dark,
through the woods
killing
and
people.
Stuff, back and forth, just doing barely anything. Like what? Did the ape kill
but the mummy, though, killed how many? 4 or 5? A good amount.
Well, yeah, but still, it was a good amount, but not like super much in the movie. Like, the mummy isn't that threatening in this movie, because as we've described, all he really does is shamble around, choke people,
run really fast.
Dirt
You'll
in
be
their
fine.
face.
Don't sit there and put your hand up and go, oh no, as the shadow comes onto you. Run, just run. You'll be all right.
Yeah, but there is only one death, and I've counted one death in the entire first half of the movie. That is 30 minutes. Without
the first death is unfortunately my attention span.
The first death,
and that's because they did another thing to save money on this movie.
Yeah, the first 15 whole minutes, well, basically counting the intro, is a flashback.
Now here's the thing,
flashback. And that's how they save money, folks.
Yeah.
Take 75% of a movie and tack your already done stuff.
Yeah, but here's the thing: if you're getting upset about this, boy.
Yeah, and it's not canon, really. It's not really brought up. It's not necessary. So why do you have that there?
It's probably because that's true.
Money?
There's probably 2 reasons. One is that VHS didn't exist. This movie was not reissued around the time of The Mummy's Tomb, so they don't have the other movie to go reflect back on and go, oh, let me go watch that again. They'll do the footage again, so you go, oh yeah, I saw that. I remember that. That was fun.
But it honestly was way too much for what they even needed. There was
It was unnecessary exposition. But what I was telling you, William, is if you think that this is kind of bogus to use a lot of old footage in a flashback, I'm telling you, there are other movies. Yeah, there's more to come. There's more movies to come that will do that.
Apparently, they also recycled Frankenstein mob footage, Green Hell footage, probably Doggo footage. They recycled scores from Invisible Woman and basically our late 30s to early 40s lineup. That's like Ghost of Frankenstein to back.
Well, they had the rights to it, so let's just use it.
Let's just reuse like 80%
yeah. Let's not try to be original.
Also, it took about 2 weeks.
Wow,
to shoot.
That's a quick. That makes sense.
Shoot. They reused a lot of footage in this, so that it's just a house. When you boil it all down, it's just that house. And thing is, they did reuse that set from I don't remember what it was exactly, but they
did that a
from
lot.
Another movie.
I think that they could.
So
here's the thing. Remember that the Limleys, when they did the earlier Universal movies, they had money to be able to spend. Now, where did they get this money? How did they use it wisely? I'm not sure. But I mean, if you think about how much money they lost on Showboat and all that kind of stuff that went with that, and then losing control of Universal to other parties. I mean, the other guy that came in, he was like, his mindset obviously was monster movies. Let's do monster movies. Let's make them as cheaply as possible. Let's make them as scary as possible.
Money, basically.
And any money we make from that. I mean, if you think about it, a lot of movies today will do a similar thing. Like, okay, check this out. A lot of movies that have come out that have made like multiple times over their original budget. A lot of them are horror movies. They're infamous because what they'll do is they'll put them out there and they'll be super scary, right? And they'll put they'll put them out in January or something like that, and a bunch of people will go see them because they want to get. There's nothing going on in January. There's no Oscar-winning movies, where you're like, oh, the great performances. There's no big summer blockbuster. What we call tent poles. Tent poles are basically, if you think of a tent pole, like two poles and then like a tent in between them. It holds the tent.
Yeah, I'd say the New Year was probably reserved for it's more at the end or the beginning of the year, somewhere sandwiched in there. I would say that'd be a great time for many companies to go, let's
January,
shift our money around.
Okay,
maybe the banks
here's the thing.
Shift our money around.
If a studio goes,
sense.
Well, we got this movie, let's just put it in February or January. What that tells a lot of people is that the studio kind of thinks that this movie is not going to make that much money. If it's a non-horror movie and they put it in January, February, it means they're kind of going, they're hoping for a little bit, but not much. They're kind of putting it like third tier in their mind. You know what I'm saying? They're not like...
Most of the time, people like to either make... Actually, people usually really like the
or February's love.
They like
love
fall,
movies.
Like
rom-coms. That's why they put them in February, because people are thinking about love. You follow me? So, but in January.
Yeah, but you know what I'm thinking about?
Oh my goodness.
This movie's pacing.
Yeah.
This movie's pacing, it shambles, just like The Mummy.
It does.
Nothing happens in this movie.
Some deaths.
Nothing happens.
Okay.
Really.
So people,
it mostly does basically the same thing they did last movie, because, there's another movie, another apprentice rises up, and they want to be immortalized with some lady, non-mutually. That's basically that thread. And then The Mummy goes around and kills some people.
It's very close to The Mummy's hand. It really is.
Then dies by fire. Again.
There you go. Well, the other part of this too is we don't care about the victims.
A lot
we
of
don't
the other
care
parts of the
about
movie
them.
is just the victims going, "Oh, what's going on? We're gonna discover that it's a mummy indeed after all, and do something."
Yeah, eventually they'll discover about it. But
eventually they do a mass.
Okay, so I unfortunately am a child of the 80s and 90s, so I remember watching movies my parents didn't want me to watch, and they were called slasher movies. It was basically this slow-moving antagonist, nigh unkillable, nigh immortal, because he had to come back in the sequels and all that kind. He had to come back again and again.
Were you the Texas Chainsaw Massacre type of dude?
I saw the first one. I liked the second one because it kind of had a goofy elements to it. on purpose, and then it just lost me from there. It just went into, can we gross you out? And it really didn't gross me out.
I feel like more closer would be Friday.
Friday the 13th. Yeah, a immortal, shambling guy. He's going to come kill you. Except, Jason Voorhees had more personality than this. But
and then there was Halloween.
Halloween
is
also
a guy in a mask.
A guy with a face you can't see. A guy in a mask, Lon Chaney Jr. coming after you, and he's gonna just keep coming and keep coming. And then if you kill him and you think he's dead, he'll pop back up in at the end of the last scene.
Although it wasn't exactly the man with 1,000 faces, right? Because obviously the legacy is a lot to own up to.
Yeah, he's the man of 6 faces. So.
I guess so.
But, I mean, they could,
Some praises.
Okay.
Cinematography, like those very meticulously planned zooms, were great. Atmosphere, definitely some more pause for some good atmosphere. Also, there isn't any comedy relief.
No.
At least that's some plus. But yeah, there isn't any comedy relief, actually.
Yeah, but the thing is, though, the laughs that would be had from this movie are unintentional, and the laughs that you kind of chuckles that you kind of get from the Mummy's hand have to do kind of with the kind of proto Abbott and Costello routines that we see from Wallace Ford, who plays Babe Jansen in the Mummy's hand. He has none of that. As I said before, he has none of that humor. You think he's going to be the source of humor, but he's not even that here.
But he's an old man in this.
Yes. And the thing is, here's the thing, though, William. A lot of modern horror movies have found that sometimes there's a balance to be had between a joke and a scene of absolute terror. Because when we get scared, we almost laugh because we were surprised that we got scared, and then we laugh.
But then there's a rush of the missing, serotonin.
Yeah, exactly. You kind of, chuckle that why was I even, scared at that? Oh my goodness, I'm such a.
You lose all of you lose all the happiness and then regain it all a minute later. It ends up being double the happiness in that.
Yeah,
moment.
and it's a kind of a relief, a laugh of relief, and horror movies later figured out how to do that, but movies back then were just like, either it was too much humor and it kind of sucked all the terror out of it, which probably, and that's fine with some certain things like Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein or any of the other creatures that they meet, that you're supposed to be funny. It's not, there's no terror at all. It's kind of, it's
kind of, remember this Karis person or this Claris person,
right?
As we'll get to. It sounds like they're making a bit of fun of them. Like, it's Claris.
Clarence. I like his,
Perny Wentz.
Yeah.
So scary. But speaking about legacy.
Right.
There was a 1959 remake of The Mummy. It was called The Mummy. That was basically this film and the last one.
Oh,
Hammer.
Hammer.
But it was 1959. Was that Hammer?
I'm a big fan of Hammer. No, all of the Hammer. Okay, there's some Hammer movies that we're not gonna watch for the podcast, but there are some we are gonna watch for the podcast. The ones that I have picked out for us to check out are Horror of Dracula with Christopher Lee, The Mummy, which has Christopher Lee again. That's the one you're talking about. And then there's one called Curse of the Werewolf, which is it's pretty original, based upon some legends, but it's pretty original. And then I can't think of any other ones. There's one called Curse of Frankenstein, which really makes Baron Frankenstein into the big villain, a really villainous kind of guy. So it's kind of good in some ways. So yeah, hey, go ahead. But a lot of the Hammer stuff, they lean really into the blood. And it's Hammer blood. It's also known as Kensington gore. It's almost like red paint. It's so much blood.
But there was this movie was double billed with a movie called Night Monster, which similarly is basically a remake of Dr. X, which, now that I think about it, it's like, as we get into like Return of the Vampire, Night Monster has Bela Lugosi in, I believe, but as well. But it's making me think about, all of these different films that we haven't done so far, that we've been sort of glancing across, that are sort of feel like in this sort of segmented horror space, like, Dr. X, Man-Made Monster, Night Monster, stuff like that we haven't covered, that I'm like, it'd be interesting to return to some of those
that's
later.
possible. I've got Man-Made Monster on the list.
We're gonna do Man-Made Monster later, yeah, but still, it's sort of like that sort of center that I feel like with just some of these titles that I feel like we could tap into later when we,
shoot, or we could do a reaction where we would watch it and just react as we do it, because then of course then we could kind of put those out a lot quicker than our podcast, maybe.
Yeah, it all depends, though, because oftentimes videos are a lot of a hassle to edit, equally to more than, podcast editing. Because at least with podcast editing, the videos, you have to add in all sorts of cool stuff in there. Otherwise, it's just like, what's the point? You could just
keep it visually interesting, editing. Right?
Yeah, so that's my little tip for those people who are aspiring editors, is to add some interesting things in there, but also don't make it like too much, so it's like the Gen Z quickness. Most people don't want memes.
There's a happy medium to be had. I think there's a middle ground to that, where it's don't do it too much and not too little.
The only part of the production that I haven't covered so far is the director Harold Young, which was as young as his surname. He did little directing and all B film.
Wow. Was it mostly did he mostly do stuff for Universal, or was he like a PRC monogram guy?
He did do the Scarlet Letter with Alexander Korda. So
Korda's a good
to put on his resume.
Yeah, Korda's a good producer.
But he was editor on that.
Okay.
Editor on that.
So he just kind of
he didn't get
editors. I hate to say this, editors, and you probably understand this. Editors get the movie after it's been in the can, and so to speak, and they have to sit in a room and kind of go through it and sometimes make the best of what footage they're given, even when some of it's trash.
Or even just, following the directions on a little sheet saying this is how this cuts together.
Yeah, and you don't have too much control. You have some control, but not too much.
Yeah. From contemporary reviews, Harrison reports stated that much happens, but nothing that will surprise the horror fans. While Theodore Strauss of New York Times proclaimed, "No wonder the Mummy lasted for 3,000 years. In that tandem fashion, he may go on for another 3 million."
Are they? I think he's saying heaven forbid, because he's saying like they're going to keep basically this guy's immortal. They're just going to keep him coming back again and again and again. I hope not. Is kind of what that review is saying.
And I mean, he will come back in 50.
Well, he'll come back
when we get to the Mummy.
Are you talking? Well, also, are you talking about if you're talking about coming back in a number of years? I mean, there's 30 years in between in the timeline of Mummy's Hand to this movie. There's a time jump.
Even though it takes place in the middle of World War II, because they still reference World War II. And yeah, it's supposed to take place in the 70s.
If you add 30 plus...
What do you think the future's like? We're going to be in... What do you think this is?
It takes us that long to stop Hitler? I mean, goodness.
It takes us that long? You think it's going to be like a H.G. Wells Things to Come situation where it's just World War II goes on
Hitler's
forever?
An elderly man by that, so just knock...
Just because you can't keep the continuity of going, well, what if we're in a different war? What if this? But they have to reference it, or else they're not hitting.
And then current, right? It's like we had to be current with things. Okay, yeah, but you were current back in the 30s. What?
So in the book Universal Horrors, which you've mentioned before, and I might just buy it.
I found it on Amazon if you're interested. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I might buy that. Probably be interesting read and help out our podcast
maybe.
A little.
Yeah.
Get some source material. They criticized its weaker execution compared to the Wolfman, lacking the same care and talent. Mainly entertaining for dedicated Universal horror fans who get that warm, fuzzy feeling when they watch one. Caught red-handed, I guess, because we're the people who are just like warm, fuzzy
I liked watching it, but I had my issues with it. But again,
even though compared to modern stuff, it's like, it's primitive.
I can still have a good time with a bad movie. Okay.
They're all great. Universal horror is just something that you can't. It's literally in a box.
Right.
That it's just you open it up and then there's treasures to behold, I guess. Or
sometimes I have a hard time with a bad movie. Like if there's a really bad Godzilla movie, I'm like, it has to be.
Or if it's Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Yeah, we talking about the movie. Yeah,
that came out on Netflix. Yeah, that's why I said Avatar, because they pronounce it like that. I had to leave for most of it.
Couldn't watch it
because I couldn't even.
Well, they're remaking it again as a series, but with actually people of the races that they're supposed to be, quote unquote. And
just sure hope they don't mess it up. The Mummy's Hand was superior, and this film is so perfunctory, so small scale, and ambition and execution. It seemed destined for the bottom of the bill slot. Hans Wolstein of all movies said it is neither the best nor the worst Universal second wave of horror films. When all said is done, there is only so much that a monster swathed in bandages can do, which I guess I agree. He's sort of taken the Great Expectations route. He's taken the Charles Dickens. It's neither the best
worst of times
nor the worst.
Well,
of
let's
times.
put it this way: when you know the history of where things are going, and you know how far down the series goes as far as quality,
and when you know that Johnny Weissmuller would be in 13 Tarzan films at least. Probably like 17.
So you're saying that they're gonna go down in quality. I mean, that's kind of,
I'm saying, my goodness.
Yeah.
I guess that the Olympics really did something to his endurance because he can just sign all of those things and do all those
right,
stuff,
exactly.
or all those movies.
But what about okay?
Concluding, It is fairly entertaining, fair, and it is easy. And it is fun to see the angry villagers from the original Frankenstein back in action via stock footage.
And I did comment on that when we watched. I was like, so guys that like torch mobs, it's like torch mobs got exported over here from Germany or wherever. There's like torch mobs in America. It's amazing. They're everywhere. Here's the other part of that is that we do get some new actors and we get some actors returning, right?
Yes, but I did want to say Turin Bay admitted, although he hadn't seen The Mummy's Tomb, it was his favorite role later on. He says, "I guess it's my favorite because it was a part closest to my own nationality. It was a young Egyptian who believed in something that we couldn't comprehend with our five senses. If I could have picked my roles, I would have been playing these kinds of heavies, peoples who have mental quirk or for some reason or other are acting against the positive side of He's like, I like those quirky people.
Well, he's talking about,
things,
it's easy to just put the label villain, but the better word would be antagonist, the one who kind of...
He likes those people who step into the room and say, "You'll see, we got
to do." No,
it's not an actual
I think
line,
what he's trying to say is that if I get to play an Egyptian, I also like, which I am. He's like, I am an Egyptian. I get to play an Egyptian, which is my nationality. If you think about it, that's good because you're not getting somebody like, of course you got George Zucco. He's not an Egyptian. I mean, just like Boris Karloff is not a Chinese warlord, drug smuggler.
Yeah, George Zucco. Like George.
Yeah,
Zucco.
which he cut. Hey, look, he came back for this movie and had like a minute-long scene, and he got on the poster. So hey.
He was basically the same.
He's got some pull now.
Last time.
Yeah, we just talked about Turhan Bey. He lived for quite a while.
He likes the people who enter the room and go, "Gimme!"
He lived for quite a while. I think that he died. I think in the 2000s or something. I don't remember or not.
Yeah, we'll talk about that because I'm about to talk about the cast. Most of this cast we've covered before, except a surprise teeny first appearance of Glenn Strange, whom we'll see him all over.
Yes, and who does he play in the future? Frankenstein's monster.
Yes, I will talk about John Hubbard, the guy who played John Banning, the archaeologist's son, was born in Chicago back in 1914. He had some time. He had his time in the spotlight during World War II as a bit of a lead actor, but after serving in the military, he sort of faded from the scene. You might remember him from movies like You'll Never Get Rich, this movie, Youth on Parade, and Duel at Diablo, 1966. When he wasn't in front of the camera, he was hustling cars and running restaurants. Died in 68. Elise Knox, who played Isabel Evans, was born in Connecticut in 1917. She went from being a fashion school graduate and a top-notch model to showing up in newsreels and snagging small roles. Her debut was in Wake Up and Live, and she is best known for movies like Sheriff of Tombstone, this movie, Hit the Ice, and A Wave, a WAC, and a Marine. I wanted to say WAC.
Yeah, it's an acronym. It was there were female officers, and they were called, WACs. Something.
Women's Active and
I don't know.
Something.
Woman army child.
Woman
I don't
active
I
commander.
don't remember what they're called.
Woman's
Okay, yeah.
Army Commander, I guess.
Women's Army Corps or WAC.
Her second husband was Tom Harmon,
Yeah.
halfback football player, Heisman Trophy winner. After a movie gig, she took a break in 49 to raise her kids. Speaking of which, her kids include Mark Harmon, the NCIS star, and Kristen, who married Ricky Nelson.
Okay, let me explain something real quick. There was a sitcom back in the day, a situational comedy, okay, called The Nelsons, and it had Ozzie and Harriet Nelson, okay, and they had some sons. I can't remember, it was Ricky and the other boy. I don't remember what the name is, but Ricky Nelson, he grew up and he got married, I guess, with the Harmon daughter, whatever. Tell me later what happened. And they had these two sons, right? These two handsome musician sons with long blonde hair who were the Nelsons, and they or something like that. And they actually had a couple of hits back in the 90s. So
sounds cool. Lee Stocks passed away in 2012 at the ripe old age of 94. Great. Great segue. Now let's talk
I remember
about
Mark
Turtleman.
Harmon, because Mark Harmon has been in a lot of different things over the years. Mainly, yes, NCIS. He was on that for like a decade or whatever, a long time. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, now let's talk about Turin Bay. Born in Austria, 1922, he could pull off all sorts of ethnic roles just because of his looks. He'd really be done like that. He hit the Hollywood scene in the early 1940s and got known for adventure and horror films. You might have caught him in movies like The Climax, 1944, which had Boris Karloff and was really just a failed attempt to get the success of the Phantom of the Opera from the year prior. But it didn't work. They were like, oh, we're going to do something just as epic and just as in style, and it didn't work. Yeah, might want to watch, see if we want to watch that someday. See if we can. 43, Phantom of the Opera. Dragon Seed, 1944. A weird one. It's got Walter Houston and Katharine Hepburn. Katharine Hepburn playing a Chinese peasant. Walter Houston is like Lin
Wow,
Chen or
did they?
okay,
what is it with people? It's Yellowface. It's Yellowface. What are there's clips probably on YouTube, but what is it with? Of course, but what are people doing when they're like, I can play Asian? Really? You're just gonna put on makeup on the corners of your eyes and you're gonna play Asian? Like, Boris Karloff did it. I mean, we just recently saw Peter Lorre.
Okay, Walter Houston sneaks themselves into really weird roles sometimes. And I guess this is one of them. But why Katharine Hepburn as a Chinese pet? Why? And Alibaba and the 40 Thieves, 1944.
That makes sense. Yeah, Arabic looking.
And as you alluded to, he also did some 90s science fiction series, Sequest DSV, Babylon 5.
Oh,
what are your memories from those?
No.
Like Star Trek.
Let me explain.
Revived?
Sequest DSV was the future, except instead of going into space, we were exploiting the sea.
For beneath the surface lies the future.
And the underwater bases and all that kind of stuff. And the Sequest was like the Enterprise, but it was a submarine. And there was a lot of characters on there. Was even including the captain was Roy Scheider. The actor who played him was Roy Scheider. Now, where would you know Roy Scheider from? Well, let me tell you. He was he was Chief Brody, the sheriff of a little island called Amity. And Amity was terrorized by a 30 to 40 foot shark. So that was Jaws, and he played Chief Brody in Jaws 1 and Jaws 2.
Interesting. Now, that's Kevin Bacon.
No, Sequest.
No, it's a meme where you can tie.
Sequest DSV also had I think it's a dolphin named Darwin, I think. Don't quote me, but the dolphin had this attachment on him which would allow him to use his dolphin language, but he could speak English. It translated it for him. And it also had a young man named Jonathan Brandis, an actor of the time. And sadly enough, Jonathan Brandis was dealing with a lot of issues at the time, and he actually did addendum mortis, unfortunately. And I was like, man, there were so many good roles that Jonathan Brandis could have done as he grew. He could have been like the next, Leonardo DiCaprio for like the TV set, for the teen set. But no. Babylon 5 was probably one of the longest, and it's still going in terms of animations. They're making new animations and comic books and all kinds of stuff. Babylon 5 was kind of like Star Trek and Star Wars meets Deep Space Nine.
The name of the place is Babylon 5.
If that's even a real way to put it. And it was, I mean, the history of everything is so crazy. There's Vorlons and Centauri, all these different races and everything. And Babylon 5 is like a giant station.
Yeah, it's like Star Trek, but they
in a way, and it used a lot of
it used Star Trek
well, and it was a station,
era.
so it was like Deep Space Nine. But there was a lot more political stuff to it too. So, and of course, there's political stuff with Deep Space Nine. But there were spin-offs of that show that had a lot more. Was almost like there was a spin-off of the show. It was almost like Star Trek Voyager, where you would all take place on a ship. So Babylon 5, pretty tight little show.
Compared to what is it compared to?
Battlestar
Galactica.
Battlestar Galactica was trying to be more gritty. This had some cool stuff in it. Like, Babylon 5 also had some former Star Trek actors. There's actually a telepath guild or whatever in it that would had psychic powers, and one of their head agents was played by Walter Koenig, who Chekhov.
The ship is being escorted by approximately half a dozen enemy fighters. Seize the ship, and we deprive them of some of their weapons capability. But it's important to capture the ship, not destroy it.
So how did you find out about all of this?
I'm a telepath. Work it out.
Oh, that's cool.
What is cool?
Do you know what else is cool? Roy Scheider wasn't to be young, gifted, and black with Barbara Bari, who was in End of the Line.
So you're doing a Kevin Bacon with Roy Scheider. Yeah, and
yes, we got a.
I'm actually watching Jaws 2 currently right now to see if it's good for our podcast. Let's talk about it later, but I'm seriously thinking we could do Jaws 1 through 4 as a bonus deal at one point. There's only like a couple scenes that are kind of like a little more. This was before PG-13, so it was like that would have been a PG-13 scene, but it was PG. Strangely enough, I don't know how Jaws is PG.
But yeah, I'm surprised that Roy Scheider is that close.
You can do it in like a couple of a lot of people are close, especially if you do like anything in the Marvel. If you do you can honestly connect anybody to Kevin Bacon if you use like Marvel Cinematic Universe actors. It's true. It's true. We'll have to do that at some point. I think there's a website that does it. Let's see. So Elise Knox, yeah.
Oh, apparently Barbara Bari was one of the 5 muses.
The question is which
Hercules. Sounds interesting.
Which Hercules movie was it? Live action? Well, there's really she. The muses. They were singing. Those singing. They were on that jar.
Yeah, the 5 singing muses. I don't know which
you
one
did pretty
Alchemini is, or Alchemini, or however it's pronounced exactly. Don't know if it's like the main one, because I know there's the main one, and then there's the sassy one, and then there's like the 3 sort of.
It's nice that you're like that. You're like that's the sassy one. You had one that you had picked out.
She might be one of those, but still.
I thought they were all kind of sassy, but
Well, I mean, they're kind of sassy, but like there was one of them that had the
that's interesting how those connections come through. Now, so what are some other things you could say about this movie to kind of wrap up the production?
You guys really are the tangentlemen, for real,
so to speak.
Yeah,
and we kind of talked about how we feel about this movie.
That was all covered.
Okay, let's put it this way: this movie is watchable. I'll watch it. Yeah.
It's still watchable. You can still have it. It's stored. It's sort of. It's as I described last episode. This is sort of taking the Ghost of Frankenstein and cementing it, going like this is how we do things now. This is the movie that went, or these were the movies that went. Okay, this is the vector.
It's the blueprint.
This
is
the
blueprint
vector.
for.
This is the.
Yeah, this is these are monster movies, folks.
This is what we're gonna do now.
Yeah, and pretty much all the movies that you might
There's
see.
no going back.
I mean, we do get a little bit more of that. Some of that story that we were missing from the Wolfman in the Wolfman meets Frankenstein, or Frankenstein meets Wolfman, however you word that. We do get a little bit more of that. Maybe there's a little bit of a philosophy there, but mostly it's when do we get to see the monster and him attack stuff, and that's pretty much what people want. It's like, give the people what they want. We will actually.
But yeah, we'll get to that next season. Thing is this is our penultimate episode of season 2, which is really weird to say because, you know, I can just remember when we were getting to the Invisible Man and, you know, we were getting done with that and
I really
got on to like all the cool stuff.
I really liked watching
it's
those
just,
bonus
you know, we did that again.
Those bonus episodes. Yeah, that was really fun.
We're getting back into the fall of the next year. Yeah, the bonus episodes were fun too. We'll have next episode,
and we're not gonna
we'll announce what those are.
Well, we're not necessarily. We could, but we're not
Or do we
necessarily.
announce them
That would
their
kind
own
of fall. That would kind of be like what we did last time. But with these, we're not necessarily going to say the date of when we're going to do them. I don't think we did that with the other ones, but because we have a lot of stuff planned going forward, some fun stuff, some new stuff, some different directions. We're still not changing the main direction of the podcast. You know, we are a science fiction and somewhat horror and some adventure movie podcast. But again, there's some things that we'd like to do, and we want to bring you guys along for that adventure. I know a lot of, you know, you might ask yourself, well, a lot of other people have done what you're planning to do. Yeah, okay, great. But if you just go with us, because these are things I'm just sharing with my son, okay, and he's sharing with me, and we're hanging out together and having a good time. And if we take you guys along with us on the journey, so be it. And you know, we
have some good
we're not
plans.
trying to be other podcasts. We're not trying to be other YouTubers. All we can be is ourselves. And if you like who we are and you like hanging out with us, you know, then you're true blue. And we want to thank you for that.
And if you've already hanged with us through all of, like, the 40 episodes we've been doing, like, you know, great on you, because, you know, we'll have another season coming after, and that'll be cool. We'll get to, like, 50 episodes of making stuff, and then we'll get all the way in a couple more seasons afterwards, to maybe, like, 5 or 6, 5th
Oh,
season.
my goodness. What a huge
100th
milestone that
episode,
would
and,
be.
you know,
What a huge
that's gonna be crazy.
millstone. What a huge millstone that would be for us. Oh, my
millstone.
God, that's hilarious.
We keep saying that. When will the monster walk out?
No,
of
but
the
he'll
room?
come. But he'll come
in
back
fact,
because we're
actually,
going
we'll shamble out of the room.
we're going to talk
right
about the plot
now.
of the Mummy's
We'll come back
tomb,
for
in
the
which
plot.
there are no tombs except for maybe the flashback.
Like, you would think
No,
that
this
movie is King
This
Tut the
has
movie,
got to
but
be a
no.
slasher because it's taking place.
Literally no.
It's yeah. I thought they were in Mapleton.
They're in the Midwest
you know,
now. They're in
Massachusetts.
Midwestern
That's-
America.
They're in Virginia Beach, Virginia.
They're in Daytona, USA.
They're in North Carolina, Charlotte. Anyway,
Exactly.
South Carolina. I don't know where that is. Oh, I'm totally messing up now. I think I'm losing my mind. All right. So anyway, let's take a quick break, and then we're going to come back and talk about the plot. And who boy are we going to have some things to say? And I will be unwrapping again. I'm just going to say unfolding the plot for you when we come back. So
We're going to be
out of our
expelling
mouths,
a lot
yes.
of cinnamon.
And we hope that the curse will not
Out
befall
of our
us. All right,
mouths.
so
And we hope that the curse won't befall us. See you then. So technically we start off with a storybook beginning, technically.
right.
It's sort of weird to think, like, you know, I mean, technically we start off with the credits, which are all of the Mummy's tomb that we're ever gonna see in this movie.
Right.
Very, very well themed, though. And it's got the hieroglyphic, you know, the papyrus font.
It makes us think that we're going to get a lot
But we
more
have-
Egyptian stuff than just the Mehmet Bey character. That's pretty much it.
But we have a storybook beginning, technically. I don't know if it's a newspaper or a magazine. We do see newspapers all over this film as sort of a, you know, give you all this information device. I mean, it was interesting when it was done in Citizen Kane, but then
They did a much better job with it. But this is
And then
Exposition City.
Dracula kept it to like two
Right.
different parts. So, you know, they could have done well with less.
Well, this
what
is
happens after that?
well. It zooms in on with a little transition
Out of.
yeah.
Well, technically, it
into
zooms in
out
on
of
the
whatever.
book, and then out of.
Okay. So we are not in Egypt at all. We are in a quaint little, I guess, town called Mapleton, Massachusetts. And Steve Banning, one of the main characters from The Mummy's Hand, played by Dick Foran, he's actually got some old person makeup on. It's 30 years have passed since what happened in that movie. And strangely enough, it only happened 2 years ago in real time, but 30 years ago in movie time, if that even makes sense. He's the guy who discovered, along with Babe Jansen, okay, whatever his name is, Babe, they discovered, well, I guess we put Professor Petrie too, if he didn't die, I don't remember. They discovered the tomb of Princess Ananka. And he's 60, he's got a grown son, John Banning, played by John Hubbard, which makes it easy because when they say John, he just turns his head, whenever your actor name is the same as your real name, it just makes everything so easy. So there's nothing to tell us that it's the 1970, but it's just everything still looks like 1940. They're talking about a war coming up, and I'm like, oh, Nam, huh? Nope, World War II. Still, I don't understand how that worked. So Steve is a widower. So apparently he had, I guess they couldn't get Peggy Moran back for this one. She played Marta Silvani. I thought she was really cute and sweet. Marta Silvani, she played her in the Mummy's Hand. So that's his wife, and she has died, and he's got a grown kid. Anyway, back to this. So they're all sitting around in their little drawing room, along with Steve's sister, who we'd never even met before, Jane, which there's a part with Jane that doesn't make... Well, the inclusion of Jane doesn't make any sense with her being what happens to her, which I'll go into. It doesn't make any sense, William. So she does keep house for him. I guess that's what you do. So he's telling the story. Now he's not just giving little bits of exposition, right? He's actually it's fading into flashback mode where it's giving these long swaths of The Mummy's Hand, the movie.
So after a sandy montage onto the dig site has found nothing yet so far. This is their expedition. So they blow up the rock and find Karis's tomb. So our protagonists are camping near the area. They discovered Karis's tomb instead of Ananka's. So Andrew Hebb swoops in to Dr. Petrie. They found the mummy of Karis in there, and they're sort of investigating it. He swoops in onto the scene, obviously when Steve is gone, and demonstrates to Dr. Petrie that the mummy's alive! But the doctor gets choked out by this black-eyed undead.
Of course, again, he killed him with what? His mummy's hand.
Steve and Babe do encounter the dead Dr. Petrie. Steve and Marta basically discover that the tomb is in another castle. The mummy he goes to killing folks with the vial of leaf juice as bait. Captures Marta and brings her away. They resolve to find the passage to Ananka's tomb. Next scene, as the mummy brings the princess, they do a sweeping pan zoom out. Andrew Head's real plan as the mummy lays Marta out on this altar table, he reveals his real plan. Which is for Marta to become immortal, but Steve finds the passage, and Babe has this climactic duel of the mind of the temple stairs, because Andrew Head goes out and he's like, you're not gonna shoot me, you don't have the gall, but he does, he just shoots him dead, anticlimactically. So Steve attempts to rescue Marta, but since the bullets don't work on the mummy, he shoots his Tana fluid instead, setting him aflame as he drinks the Tana that's going down the drain. And that's really all this movie.
And
not only the parts that are necessary, but also a lot of the unnecessary parts. Such as, oh, we had comedy relief in this movie. Let's show every instance of comedy relief in this movie.
Well,
we had a villain that doesn't even really appear in this at all. Just for the... you only get the later half of the story from this, really.
What about the scene when that one, I guess, scientist dude was in the same room with Andoheb, the high priest, and Andoheb is explaining to him how the Tana leaf drops or whatever wake Karis up, and the guy grabs his hand, and he wasn't even there for that. What's his name? Steve Banning was not even there for that scene, but he tells all about it as if he was there. I guess he saw the movie that he was in. So John, the son, doesn't believe anything. He's like, I'm a doctor, Dad, and I know you did some stuff, but I don't buy any of it. Well, of course, he's going to get his mind changed about that.
Beyond the imagination. Most amazing thing I've ever heard. Why, it's like hearing from a world beyond.
Well, that's the way it happened.
So when we jump over to Egypt, finally something maybe approximating a mummy's tomb. Not quite. Kind of. Not quite, but though. So an older, twisted high priest, Andoheb, played by George Zuko. He is got old person makeup on again. No, not again. In this scene, he's aged up. He does look very similar to the high priest that he succeeded. I can't remember what the name of the guy was that played that. He had an Italian name, I think.
Eduardo Cianelli.
But that guy died, and strangely enough, it's gonna do that again. But if you're thinking, okay, wait, Andoheb, didn't he die in The Mummy's Hand? He got shot 4 times. He fell down those stairs, the ones from Green Hell that were left over from the Green Hell movie. He fell all the way down those stairs. He did. Okay, he did.
Both attempts failed. The bullet he fired into me only crushed my arm.
But as you can probably see, he not dead because of plot. He's needed to hand off the reins of being the high priest, the guardian of Karis or Ananka to Mehmet Bey, who is he's not Ardeth Bey, I think, was the previous guy. He's another Bay altogether. He's not Michael Bay either. So he's basically, but he is actually Egyptian. The guy who plays him is actually Turhan Bey is actually Egyptian. So okay, kudos to that. But
he is Austrian born.
Okay,
so,
well, but you're still. It doesn't mean you're white. I mean, he's definitely a brown guy. He just because he was born in another country, he's still Egyptian. I mean, it's where your genetics come from. But he is listed like 4 or 5 down. There's even like somebody else. I think George Zuko is like only in there for like 30 seconds before he, kicks the bucket and passes the torch to Mehmet Bey. And he's like above him. But I know George Zuko is like a bigger star, quote unquote. I guess Mehmet Bey is just getting started, with his career.
So
but he's at the bottom.
Do we have like the same dude who's in the last movie playing this Andoheb in this movie?
Yes.
Which it's funny. It's very
George
funny.
Zuko.
It's like we're gonna get the guy who played the old guy in the last movie, who was a completely different person, to play Andoheb in this movie. I guess just because he can look old and people can't tell the difference between. Oh wait, he doesn't look like himself because he's 40 years old.
He's got white hair, a wig, and he's got got a mustache, so he must be older. That's what they do with a lot of these characters, and they make them not funny. Like if they used to be real, kind of have a little, and be kind of happy-go-lucky, they're just real grim and grumpy now. But this movie does go darker. This movie does go darker than The Mummy's Hand. If you thought there was some funny to be had, especially with Babe in The Mummy's Hand, the funny is not here. And
yeah, distinct lack of comedy relief.
Yeah, but I kind of like that. I like that. Strangely enough, I like it.
Overall, isn't that interesting?
No, it's too simple.
It could sort of get fixed.
Yeah.
In the next one, but I feel like they wouldn't keep it up.
I am not sure. I think it's just the story is.
That's my prediction.
I don't think it's going to get any better. I think honestly, this is
it's not going to get.
It's going to get
better
worse.
Than marginal.
Yeah.
It's only going to be marginally better.
Now, the fire, if you want to talk about somebody who should have been dead but's not dead, Karis, of course, like the best slasher villains, you can never truly kill him. So he supposedly got burned with fire, right? He got seared and twisted and maimed.
The fire that sought to consume Karis only seared and twisted and maimed.
Okay, I guess that's why his arm is like all, bunched up and broken and gamey or whatever. But he's still...
But no, he's still alive.
Yeah.
It's like...
But he looks different. And
How?
Well,
exactly.
Fire...
Be alive in a good state.
Okay.
You'd think he'd be, like, vegetative.
Well, Tom Tyler played Karis previously. He's thinner. Okay, he's thinner and more, I guess a little bit more. He looks a little bit slimmer, right? And you can actually see the shape of his face. And then I guess when fire happens, you gain a little bit of pounds, you gain a little bit of height, and your face looks like oatmeal mush with a little pouty lip sticking out. I guess that's what happens.
Oh, you're talking about the mummy.
I'm talking about Lon Chaney Jr. as
But
Karis.
Seriously, if any man is to take such a beating, honestly, you'd probably be vegetative.
If you like to talk to tomatoes.
Vegetative state for the rest of his later years. And I mean, that's a depressing thought to ever think of anyone having.
Yeah.
Or anyone like.
Well, I wonder if
like, it's sort of depressing thinking about like what if your grandpa was the best man in the world and then he suddenly went really sick and now he has mental ailments that just weaken him, and it's sad to see.
Well, so basically, just like
But still, he
this
should have at
conversation has
least been
gotten dark
affected.
too.
All around me are familiar faces.
So
yes, but he should have been affected, is what I was meaning to say.
Yes, but he's not.
Not
he's
to bring
still...
down your jogging session.
No. He is still Karis, but honestly, throughout this movie,
Or rather, Andaheb, because we're speaking about Andaheb being riddled with bullets.
I thought you were talking about Karis should be vegetative. I was talking about Karis surviving the fire, and you were talking about Andoheb? Okay.
We were talking about Andaheb, and then you went on to describe Karis after that.
Oh, I thought you were still talking about Karis now.
Still
Okay, no.
talking about.
This
is how we conversate sometimes, I guess.
That's how it happens.
We each have our own thoughts about the conversation as of current, and then they just get
smushed
when
together.
You realize that we're trying to talk about two different things at the same time.
Oh, that's fine. We're all human. So, but the thing that about Lon Chaney Jr.'s performance is there's only one part, and we'll get to it. It's kind of the part that made me chuckle out loud in his acting. You actually see his acting through Jack Pierce's makeup. You actually see him emote a little bit. Mostly he's just trying to look vaguely menacing, and he drags himself along until he kills the next victim and then drags himself back. But there's a part that he kind of does show some personality in, and it's real quick and you'll miss it, but I recommend this scene definitely. Okay, back to this. So now Andoheb is telling him, okay, you've got new duties. You've got to watch after Karis. You have to, here's how the Tana leaves and the juice works and all this kind of stuff. And they're like, okay, 3, 6, 9, how many ever? Okay, 3 to do this and 6 to do that. And all right, you can die now. And it's like, once I've said my piece, I can die now. Well, okay, so he got shot 4 times, fell down a stair, and he just hung out for 30 years just so he can tell this new guy about how to do the Tana leaves. Okay.
Exactly.
All right,
should be vegetarian.
Hey, let's just go with it, right? Let's not try to think too much. So it is Lon Chaney Jr. playing Karis, except for like long shots, and then it's a stuntman named Eddie Parker. So Andoheb tells him to take, I don't know, for some reason, to go to America. Oh yeah, because the desecrators of Ananka's tomb, Steve and Babe, they are in America. They're in Mapleton, whatever, Massachusetts. So he's like, you got to go kill them.
Now swear by the sacred gods of Egypt
that you will never rest until the last remaining member of the Banning family is destroyed. Until they all have suffered the fate of those who dare to defile the tomb of our royal den. You got to be the living embodiment of the mummy's, the Pharaoh's curse. So they had to wait for the new high priest to be born, grow up, and be apprenticed, and then go through most of his life, and then now he's here to go. Andoheb says the preparations are complete to the last detail. The position as caretaker of a little cemetery has been arranged. Awesome. So we get probably some cemetery scenes. Well, very few, but that's universal for you. You got to do some of that. He swears by the sacred gods of Egypt, and he's not going to rest until the entire Banning family and the others who took part in the opening of Ananka's tomb, they're dead. Okay, I guess that explains what he does with somebody that has absolutely nothing to do with this. Kills them too. I guess you just got to kill the whole family. Whatever. So Bay goes. He also says that, I want you to keep any temptation away that might destroy you as it nearly destroyed me. Meaning that Andoheb was like, he was really into Marta. He almost wanted to make her immortal and hang out with him forever. And it sounds like that, well, that's what Mehmet Bay ends up doing too. But he's like, yeah, don't give in to temptation. Just destroy me in the first movie. And it's like, it's exactly what he does. The future wife of the son of the guy who desecrated the tomb. Okay, well, we'll get there. So the movie does really move. Even it just kind of sunk 10 minutes in. So you got 50 minutes to go to get all this information going. So they go to Massachusetts. They're staying in a ship. Again, we've got a servant of a nigh immortal being, putting him in a coffin and taking him on a ship. That reminds me of Dracula.
Master, we're here. You can't hear what I'm saying, but we're here. We're safe.
Yeah, we are seeing somewhat of a montage of this, of the travel that they're doing to get here. And honestly, there's some of the things that are cool in this movie but honestly, it's just like, what more can we say? you know, there's a mummy's curse that's
Yeah,
inflicted over his
now
entire family for some reason.
we're in Mapleton
Okay.
now, right? So Mehmet Bey, he takes over from a previous guy at a cemetery. This is an old guy, and he's like, why would anybody as young as you want to take over a cemetery? And so, okay.
I expected a much older man.
It's very peaceful here. I think I like it.
But it's such a lonely existence.
He gets Karis' sarcophagus, and they set up shop there, kind of hide out. Mehmet actually is going to go out to the crypt. It's at night, right? So he wakes up Karis with the fluid of 9 tanna leaves. The three drops of the leaf or whatever, I guess, keep him alive. And then 9 actually wake him up to go do some stuff. So what he wants to do is he wakes him up. He gets out. He's got a crippled arm. He's got a dragging leg, and he just goes. And I know we're supposed to be afraid of him kind of encroaching and coming, and it kind of is weird and scary, but it just takes him forever. He moves at a snail's pace. So if anybody really wants to get away, they could just jog away. The first 2 people that Karis finds are a young man and a woman in a parked car by the cemetery, parking, you know what I'm talking about? When they're in there, they're going to kiss up on Lover's Lane or where those things. A lot of these killer movies that's usually the first victims is a boy and a girl, from high school or whatever, and they're up in a car kissing and listening to music, and they usually go, "What was that? I don't know. That's the wind, right? Here, give me a kiss." And it's like, "You gotta get out of here. I'm afraid." So again, this is a very famous kind of trope in a lot of these movies. To come, not necessarily with Universal, but with slasher movies and murder movies. He just shows up as a shadow. Karis shows up as a shadow starting out. So people are saying things like, "I saw this shadow and it's really scary."
The shadow crossed my face.
A shadow.
And all of a sudden, a shadow passed over us.
What sort of a shadow?
Just a shadow.
Sort of shadow.
All black.
A shadow for a suspect.
Even if you told the newspaper, what are they going to do with that? A shadow, right? He does mess with some people. There's a farming couple. They call the county sheriff.
Hello, sheriff speaking. What do you want? I'm back to bed. You must be crazy.
And they're like, a shadow, really? So Karis keeps going on, and he gets to the Banning house, right? It's kind of a, I guess, 2-story little kind of ranch house, farmhouse. It looks like it looks okay, but I think it's made out of the most flammable material known to man, as we'll find out. So all the animals are scared, but the humans around are kind of like, what's going on? Kind of dumb. Inside the house, Steve is playing checkers with John and totally wipes the floor with him. John's future wife, Isabel, I think I forgot to say her name, Isabel, and the sister of Steve, Jane, are watching. They all start to go to sleep, and John goes outside to see what's happening with the dogs. I guess, okay, John is the son, right? You'll see more of him in a little bit. Karis is on the other side of the house. Even though he has a game leg or dragging leg, he's able to climb up the vine trellis on the side of the house, and he's able to pull himself in, and he gets into Steve's bedroom. His eyes don't look as cool as they did when Tom Tyler did. Tom Tyler had these blacked out looking eyes, like a doll's eyes, I guess like a shark's eyes, and they looked kind of cool. So Steve is up there, and all he can say is Karis, and then one scream before a hand closes about his throat. He is dead. Karis is gone. John gets there. He finds his father dead on the floor. He's got finger marks on his throat with some kind of weird gray, dusty marks, which we'll find out, what that is later. So the gray stuff try the gray stuff. It's delicious. The gray stuff is analyzed by a police chemist, and he can't make anything of it except it's like it's not a soil sample from that area.
I've tried to compare this with specimens of clay and dirt from all over this territory. Seems to be nothing like it around here.
Oh, great. Okay, that's fantastic. The coroner who is looking over Steve's dead body, they're just like, well, I guess it's just some dust, and nothing really comes of it. The sheriff says it's just another one of those fiend murders.
This is just another one of those fiend murders.
What reason would anyone have for doing such a thing? You can't just call it a fiend murder and let it go at that.
Fiend murders. Okay. Yeah. Right.
It was a
hobo gangster who mugged your dad about the throat. The sheriff does kind of connects some things together, like the shadow stories that the couple and the farmers are kind of saying. But you know, he kind of hooks onto that a little bit, but he doesn't do much with it yet. The story gets out, and there are these reporters kind of gathering, and it's like, okay, so this famous archaeologist gets murdered, and he's got some dust on his throat. Is that so important that you send out a whole cavalcade of reporters to just hang out in a small town in Massachusetts to find this out? It's like, it's not front page news.
I guess they're trying to justify them, reusing footage of mobs.
Can't have a
like,
mob
hey, we
build
have a
up
mob
if you don't
here,
start spreading the word, right? Because they have to come from far and wide, I guess. John is super rational. He doesn't believe in anything supernatural. So his father's death is so senseless, and his brain is stuck on this murder so much. He neglects his doctoring, his physician practice, and his future wife Isabel. She's like, finally, she's able to convince him, hey, just let's get out of the house, get your mind off these things. Let's go into the countryside and hang out.
It's wonderful being with you again, darling. Aunt Jane told me you'd called, but since that night, I've had so much on my mind.
Oh, I understand, John.
So Mehmet Bey, though, just like his master Andoheb, has a hard time fighting temptation. He can't fight the temptation. Once he sees Isabel, just like Andoheb when he saw Marta and got smitten, he starts kind of, wanting her to be his girl. Okay, so there's a telegram that shows up, and it is announcing the arrival of Steve's former partner, Babe Hansen, played by Wallace Ford, except his name has changed from Jansen to Hansen. I don't know why. There's absolutely no reason why.
A lot of the things is just like, there's no reason why you would change it. Like, this, why are they in America? This
and also
like,
if you liked his funny little goofball stuff in Mummy's Hand, that's fine. If you didn't like it, great. You're going to be in a good company here because it's gone. He's older. He's graver. Fast.
As well as his role
it's
in
about
the movie
done.
is.
Yeah.
And
he's like listed,
there.
I think,
he's just there,
second he's listed second after Dick Foran on the list of people in it, and really they don't show up that much. Lon Chaney, Lon Chaney.
Who was
Sorry,
the
not
highest
Junior,
bill?
but Lon Chaney.
Well, yeah, but Lon Chaney Jr.
Yeah.
We talked about him in The Wolfman, about how he would, take any role. He was sort of that, person that they could sort of cheapen his involvement.
Well,
along with their cheapening.
Lon Chaney is a pull. He's a box office pull. You're like, ooh, we're going to see him be a monster. He got famous from Of Mice and Men. He wasn't very well known, and then they're like, oh, that's a really good acting job you did there. And he's known for his acting. After that, though, he starts getting well known to be a monster guy. So Universal's going to milk that dry. They are.
But the thing is, it's like, it's sort of hard to pinpoint his exact role, at least until we do further research. But he's probably definitely the highest billed, but it's not like he's not a Boris Karloff.
Yeah, what are you getting for your money?
Bela Lugosi.
You're getting a guy who moves around really slow and drags his foot behind him. He's not very scary to me.
And didn't you say anything about if they don't have
paid less? I don't know if they. I don't know if they let him. I don't know if they did that. I think he was able to negotiate. I don't know how much.
Yeah.
He did do a lot of body acting. Okay, so now what about characters that are like mute or something like that? You don't. If they're doing a lot of acting, you don't just pay them less. I think that's more the rules for extras. I think that's the rules for extras, not necessarily for quote leading characters. You can have a completely silent leading character, and you need to pay them for the acting that they're doing.
But it's just general supposition,
Babe
I guess you could say.
In the scene. He's there. He's arrived because he heard about the death of his friend Steve. He is really crushed and depressed and sad, as you might be. So John, Steve's son, meets him there at the station, tells him everything, including about the gray streaks of dust on the neck of Steve.
What was that? The kind of grayish mark on Dad's throat. Must have been a powerful hand that strangled him. What did you say? Kind of grayish mark on Dad's throat. Clay or dust or something.
Grayish mark. A grayish mark.
And when Babe hears about that, he's like, I know what that is. He's sure it's the mummy. So it's the full moon again. I guess so we can see what's going on. Has nothing to do with Larry Talbot growing hair and fangs. But Karis is out and about. The Bannings have a caretaker named Jim. I was like, oh, okay, I guess their ranch house is big enough to need a caretaker? I don't understand that. So he's trying to quiet the dogs down when he finds the mummy looming over him. He tries to shoot him a couple times with a rifle, but doesn't do any good.
Actually, to answer that, I would say retirement money. That is, maybe because they're, older.
A lot of movies they did this kind of thing.
It would be retirement money that would be invested in a nice house. Have some caretakers, because after all, it's harder to take care of yourself when you're older.
A big part of this movie.
We're talking about oldness being, don't be afraid of getting old. It's
also you get to enjoy the family you've created. All right. But he doesn't die. He's terrified and he faints or something, like he's in complete shock. So Karis is like, okay, because Karis wasn't even supposed to kill him. He's not part of the bloodline or the family, which that doesn't make any sense to me. So he seeks out his real victim. This doesn't make a lot of sense. Steve Banning's sister, Jane Banning, played by Mary Gordon. You only see her a couple times, but she gets killed by the mummy. Why? Because she happens to be the sister of the guy who desecrated. You've already killed the guy who desecrated, right? You killed him. So wouldn't it be much more torturous to kill the sister in front of him?
Wait, right. They killed, didn't in this movie they kill?
Yes.
They kill, both of the main characters in the previous movie?
Yeah, but they had...
That's actually a thought that's, very unique for Universal.
Yeah, but they had something to do with the desecration of Princess Ananka's tomb. Jane didn't do anything. She just happened to be the sister of the guy who did some bad deeds, according to Ando.
Yeah, she entered the world and then left it without
No, of course,
reason.
you definitely didn't leave willingly.
Not left
All right,
willingly,
so then we get these newspaper headlines that talk about the murders spreading or the story. So a bunch more crime reporters descend on Mapleton, and Jim has been stricken with hemiplegia. It's a form of paralysis caused by severe shock. Okay, whatever. So Babe has to get people to believe him that it is the mummy situation. He tries to convince everybody, the sheriff, the coroner. John doesn't even believe him. He tries to talk John into leaving town because he knows he's going to come after him, probably, I guess, because he's part of the bloodline. So that gets no respect. So Babe goes, all right, I'm going to go over to the bar that's part of the hotel. I'm going to order a beer. One of the reporters goes, hey, wait a minute, you're Babe Jensen Hansen, whatever your name is.
Excuse me, aren't you Babe Hansen?
That's right.
I'm Jake Lavelle, New York Record.
Oh, yeah.
Was you down here because of all the trouble?
Maybe.
Too bad about Mr. Banning and his sister, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Any idea what's behind everything?
I know what's behind it.
You know what?
I know all about it. Only nobody will listen to me.
And Babe just tells the story. They don't flashback, I don't think, for this part. Thank God. Whether or not they believe him, they're willing to listen. So at least that's close. Of course, a good story is a good story to a reporter. You gotta eat that stuff up. So Mehmet Bey, though, he's strangely enough is at the hotel too. I mean, he's probably watching Babe's whereabouts so that he can figure out where Babe is to send Karis out after him. But he's there listening, and he's having a cup of tea.
Well, it started 30 years ago when Steve Banning and I discovered Ananka's tomb.
Yeah, well, what's that got to do with it?
Everything to do with it. That tomb was guarded by a live mummy.
That's literally
right. Listening
what they did in the last movie was have the dude in the bar. It was probably exactly Babe, exactly telling a story about his, the things that he did, exactly with an apprentice.
Right. The Dijon guy
at a table toward the left back.
The Dijon guy was he the one listening in? The servant of Andoheb. We were saying it was a We were saying it was a Murloc Dijon situation.
I think you're correct.
No.
I was like, isn't that
You're forgetting the joke you made about the Dijon. So yeah, DuckTales. Woo. DuckTales. Woo. All right, so a short time later, another panicked citizen reports a shadow. It is not the famous character known as the Shadow.
You can never defeat me. It's like I said. I am the ultimate life form.
No, it is not Shadow the Hedgehog.
Is it the famous hedgehog,
but the sheriff, he doesn't buy these mummy stories. Well, the mummy doesn't.
Still totes a gun,
he doesn't need. Well, that's right. It's right. So if it's a shadow and it's supposedly like he thinks it's a real thing causing the shadow thing. A bunch of other people, reporters, everybody starts, gathering in the streets. I mean, they're just going crazy about it. Babe stays behind to pay for his drink, and then he goes out in the opposite direction of the mob and straight into, who would you guess? Karis, right? So they have Babe run into a blind alley. He gets dragged back down when he tries to climb over a fence. It's kind of sad that they kill him off because, I don't know. I didn't hate him too much. He was kind of a, he got the bad short straw, The theories about the mummy get proved by Babe's death. I think the sheriff starts really kind of taking it seriously. Murder attributed to supernatural being, reports the Maple Daily News. So John spots a piece of bandage caught on a bush outside Steve Banning's house. And he does a smart thing. He takes the bandage to a scientist, and it's Professor Norman, played by Frank Reicher of King Kong fame. I think that's right. He's actually the same guy who played the boat captain. Yeah, Englehorn. Yeah.
Yes, he did. And King Kong was a much more interesting movie than this. It had stop motion, which I am always glad to cover movies.
We are going to see some more stop motion when we get into the early to mid 50s. You'll start seeing those all over the place, and it's going to be stop motion city. Some Claylians.
Looking forward to seeing some clay aliens.
Claylians, yes, and
Claylians. That
and
sounds
some
like some
moldable monsters.
Video
some
game
moldsters.
title. Claylians.
No, modelsters? No, okay.
Okay, that one wasn't as
so
good.
Speaking of mold, Professor Norman from the university, he's able to look at the mold on the bandage, and he finds out it's the same as the handprints on the victims, right? And it's centuries old. The cloth has myrrh, cedar oil, and sodium carbonate, all ingredients in the Egyptian embalming process. Like, okay, wow, you just knew all this stuff. And he knows everything.
Honestly, it's just a really weird element to even think of, because in the first place,
right,
he literally just kicked dirt in his face, right? So it shouldn't even be like,
but it
actual dust from
he
the
knows
mummy
everything.
And
He's
stuff.
like
the
Batman in this movie.
Is he like,
I don't know. Yeah.
Is he carbon dating all of this? He's like, and the enriching process of the
They got the best guy to
like,
figure all this stuff out.
How? And it would probably be mixed in with American dirt, so
there's a way.
Really hard to tell
There's a way to tell when you do chemical tests on
things.
It'll change. So there's a small hieroglyphic on the cloth. It's the same as the one found on the mummy of Ananka.
That mold and this strip of linen both came from the body of a mummy. The chemicals were used for embalming. There's no doubt about it. That inky hieroglyphic there is the same that's found on the body of the Princess Ananka. It dates back almost about 3,000 years to the reign of King Amenhotep, her father. But whether you are ready to accept it or not, we are dealing with the presence of the living dead.
How does he know? And it dates back 3,000 years to the time of her father, Amenhotep. Oh, how did you know that? Okay.
How did you know that at all? Like, really? Like, what, you have to
instantly,
have, like, the design?
Instantly, the scientist,
the objects in your
he goes,
hand
we're dealing with the living dead. He just goes straight to it. So the sheriff is now, he goes, okay, now he's on the search for a walking mummy. But in the meantime, we get an interesting thing. John Banning, he gets called up to the Army Medical Corps. He gets to be a doctor for the Army in World War II, which has been going on for 30 years. He wants to do it. It's just bad timing.
Yeah, just casual things to come action.
Right, that's
here.
right. I remember that. I remember that.
70s. Though at the point of things to come, it was.
Yeah, I remember that.
It
they
was
had that
Mad Max Fury Road.
It had that boss guy with the
or
fuzzy,
maybe even the first Mad Max.
the fuzzy vest or whatever his name was. The boss guy, the chief. So what ends up happening is they're like, oh well, for some reason John and Isabel could go ahead and they have to get married so she can leave with him. I don't understand that. I thought you left wives at home on the home front, and if you got married, then you could, maybe she could, be with child. So when you come back from the war, you'd have like a little 5-year-old kid or something. I don't know. So what ends up happening is Mehmet Bey finds out about the wedding thing, and again, folks, this is an hour movie, and this is all happening very fast. While he's just hanging around, he notices things, that's what Mehmet Bey does. He just wanders around town. He finds John and Isabel sharing a kiss, talking about the wedding preparations, and he goes, I'm going to make Isabel my bride. She will bear me future high priests, and they'll live together with immortality from the town of Lead. That is the same thing that Andoheb had a thing that he wanted to do. I think what did he want her to be like the Princess Ananka's reincarnation or something? I don't remember. So he has only seen Isabel twice. Ando have actually had a real conversation with Marta before he decided that she was going to be his forever, which doesn't make sense. Okay, so I guess this guy only needs 2 looks, and that's all it took, right? So John is like, I want to have a proper ceremony. I don't want to like just go to the judge's office and officiate this thing. Mehmet Bey is at his crypt area, and he's thinking about what he wants to do, and he brings Karis out, and he's like, I want you to go and not kill somebody this time. I want you to go kidnap Isabel and bring her back to the crypt. And for the first time, you see some emotion from Karis. He's like, bro, no, nuh-uh.
I am going to take on to myself a wife, Karis. A wife. Do you understand that? The one who is supposed to be the bride of the last of the Bannings. The one whom it was ordained I should find. Together we 3 until the world crumbles and there is no longer a stone or a rock or a tree or a blade of grass. That is my will, Karis, and you shall obey it.
He's just kind of like, yeah, and he almost is like his hand is like starting to go towards Mehmet to kill him. He's like, I'm gonna kill you. Nope, don't kill him. You know, his hand is like crawling over.
That's honestly just.
I think it's the best scene in the movie.
Overusing the word weird here, but you know, it's like, why did they make this decision?
He does some acting, he does some body and face acting.
We see a couple new things.
Yeah, Karis is disgusted, but even though he's disgusted, he can't disobey the orders, so he's got to go get Isabel. This reminds me of like Frankenstein's monster being told, you got to go, you know, he's going to go kidnap like a woman or whatever, just kind of that feel to, or Cesar going after that girl, you know, in Cabinet Dr. Caligari. Sneak in. So he's able to carry her, even though his arm is withering and useless at most times. And the mother of Isabel, Mrs. Evans, she catches sight of her daughter being lifted through the window, and she goes to go tell. So I think there's a time where doesn't Karis run across a farming guy who's taking care of a horse? That's Glenn Strange, right? Doesn't he meet him at this time? But it's a cameo. He just sees him real quick. And then, because Glenn Strange just played small roles until they went, because in a couple movies he starts playing Frankenstein like twice, 2 or 3 times. So that's kind of a little nifty little fact to know, but that's about it. So the sheriff he's listening. Yeah, okay, we got a mummy situation. So he gets a torch mob together, and some of them are used from clips from Frankenstein, as you said. Pitchforks, tiki torches.
Everywhere in Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein, and the Wolfman that had mobs in it, they say. And I would guess these aren't exactly from the movie exactly, because I would say that they're different, cameras, different takes, but they're all for the same project.
It fills out the scene a little bit. It makes the crowd look a little bigger than they were, or whatever. And then you also...
Or just
so John Banning, he's talking to the crowd and telling them a little bit of background and stuff. And no, there's not a flashback scene, thankfully enough. One of the mob guys, remember the torch mob, he goes, oh, I know something. The new caretaker at the cemetery, he's been talking, and he's really like a chatterbox, and he's talking all about Egypt, and he quotes a lot of passages out of his Egyptian Bible.
Did I hear you say something about Egypt?
That's right.
I've been out to the graveyard, Sheriff, and I was talking to the caretaker about a final resting place for myself.
Yes?
And the caretaker spoke all about Egypt and quoted a lot of passages from his Egyptian Bible.
They're like, oh, okay, so Mehmet Bey can't keep his mouth shut, and that's why he's going down. Mrs. Evans runs up and says, Isabel's gone, and they're like, now we're going to torch mob it up. So they're going to go over to the cemetery, I think, or head that way. In the crypt, Isabel wakes up. She fainted, of course, because why wouldn't you if you saw Lon Chaney, in bad makeup? Sorry, Jack Pierce. Coming through. She is strapped down to a coffin.
Exactly like the first movie. Brought in with both arms, put in onto a altar, I guess. Strapped down to an altar, while an apprentice of the 7 jackals talks about, I want to be immortalized with you, I'm in love with you, and stuff. I feel like...
he says to, Mehmet Bey says to Isabel, he says, it is your destiny to achieve the greatest honor that can come to a woman.
That creature...
Karis, you have nothing to fear from him. He has brought you here to me because it is your destiny. to achieve the greatest honor that can come to a woman. You will become the bride of a high priest of Karnak.
No. No.
For you, I'm going to forsake the teachings that have been handed down to us for generations upon end. The secret that has kept Khari's alive all these years can be ours as well.
I'm like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, he says, he goes about it, the dialogue in a little...
Isabel out back and hide her. Mehmet Bey grabs a gun. Oh, see, Shadow the Hedgehog didn't have a gun, but Mehmet Bey does. No, Shadow does have guns, and so does Mehmet Bey. That's what I just said. All right, so he exits out of the crypt. He comes up behind the torch mob, and he tries to stall for time.
You gentlemen wish to see me?
Yes. You've some explaining to do. What have you done with Isabel?
With whom?
Up to now, I've only asked questions. Do I have to use another method to make you speak up? Well,
I know nothing of any such person, Effendi.
the mummy. Isabel, through the woods. Benny! Well?
For those who defile the temples of ancient Egypt, a violent death shall be their fate.
He goes, I don't know. This is, I don't know any of this stuff.
What are you talking about? Look at me, I'm
right,
wearing a cap.
Exactly.
I'm totally not
but
that dude
one of the search parties that has seen Karis carrying Isabel, and he says it, and Mehmet pulls out his gun and tries to shoot John I guess because he's the next. He's the husband of the girl I want.
Yeah, and we have Karis in the middle of this house, and everyone
Why did Karis
I
go back
fighting
to
against it or like running away?
The house? Was he like, oh well, my master's dead, or was he taking Isabel back? Like, this is where I stole Isabel. I'm gonna put her back. I'm just gonna leave. So because he's like, yeah, I'm free.
I'm gonna put her back like I bought her at Target.
Just put her back. Hey guys. No harm, no foul. My bad.
Yeah, but this time the mob are throwing torches up into the manor, and so the manor
but John starts coming in there, and I like this scene a little bit because the flames are barely
and he's just waving the torch at him. Like, really, man, is that gonna do much? Unless it's like a bear.
John runs in the house, and he comes up the stairs. He gets knocked down the stairs, and the stuntman lands on the torch, which is awesome. That's great. I love those little mistakes that are, kind of like, they kind of add to it, but you're like, how many, did he actually get burned? How many broken bones? Yeah. So Karis is on the balcony with Isabel in his arms, and they're lobbing torches, so what ends up happening is he holds him at bay with the torch. No.
Muhammad Bey?
Yeah, nice. He gets,
John
gets Isabel lifted to safety and starts to confront him. What ends up happening is it's just burning. Yeah.
And Dala goes to Frankenstein. The whole place is burning down and crashing upon him. And it's still a bit of a great scene. You get, overall in the scene, you get different, rooms of the manor, as well as, the balcony outside, traveling around it. Which, some of that atmosphere is pretty cool, honestly, seeing some of that, as well as, the
But how is he going to survive?
How
is he going to survive for the next two movies? We don't know, but
40s?
Then he dies, yeah, quote unquote. But it doesn't say the end. You get a newspaper headline that says the reign of terror is over. And on the back of and toward the rest of the newspaper it says, okay, we got a newly married couple, John and Isabel, and it shows them, and they got married. They're slipping away to the train station, and they got a bunch of people throwing rice and confetti at them. I guess you wanted a nice little end. Capper movie, a happy ending capper. Some people are sometimes they'll be like, we've seen a couple of movies where a castle will blow up.
And we see them escape, and then they just stand there. That's it.
Yeah, but we did. I think
continuing their life.
We saw that with Ghost of Frankenstein. Again, we get a house burning down, and we get a couple walking off into a romantic sunset or whatever. And this one, they're going off into the sunset, but they're married. So I think that they're trying to have people leave with a smile on their face.
Well, yeah, but this movie certainly is a movie. There's certainly, I definitely will say that the most enjoyable part of it is the atmosphere, seeing that, 40s clarity and just the different shadowings is really gotten nailed down. And I
do like the mummy as a monster, as a creature.
Great.
It is
Cap. Let's talk about Cap.
Well, they don't lean into it. completely. If you want a good example of camp, I would talk about Batman, the series from the 1960s. Everybody would take things, would speak very matter of fact and seriously when, of course it's ridiculous. Everything's ridiculous. You would say, well, I have my bat shark repellent. They'd be like, oh, okay. And when they don't treat it as a joke, but it really is a joke. That's part of that that's camp to me. That's not really a really good definition. But that's what it is to me.
Yeah, but I will say that the campiness is sort of debatable, but if you do like camp, you could probably watch a bit of that movie for those two reasons, and probably, unfortunately, those two reasons only. It's a little bit sad to see. Basically, it's just the previous movie with a little bit more sausage topped on it, and that's really it. It really doesn't... In fact, you don't really need to have watched this movie. A lot of the time, sometimes that's a bit of an oxymoron. Let me restart. There will probably be many instances with these movies that you could probably skip, so that you could start somewhere and not need to know what happened before or after, especially since in the case with the Universal monster movies, they don't adjust for the fact that there's going to be a sequel, because they don't know that there's going to be a sequel or what's going to happen in the sequel, really, for a decent amount of them, And it's just, sequels stacked upon sequels. They're sort of self-contained, the monster dies, but then you don't need to know much about the
this
movie
is not camp, again, because, let's just say, okay, Susan Sontag kind of defined a little bit of what camp is. She said it's like it's being playful and anti-serious, as well as exaggerated and artificial, ostentatious, affected, theatrical. And I don't think this meets that.
I feel like the more campy horror
over
movies
the top,
are obviously, when camp
yes,
is more defined.
The 60s and 70s embrace that.
The 60s and 70s and 80s and 90s especially could be.
Yeah, the
80s and 90s,
campy stuff still showed up. It just wasn't as much because people were like, well, that's not what we're looking for. So 60s, 70s, a little bit.
It's like, have you seen the new Ghostbusters block?
I would say
movie?
Something campy from later would be like the Austin Powers movies, I guess. But they're still set firmly in they're a 60s parody. So obviously that's where that's coming from. But yeah.
So a little bit of nostalgia.
Yes. But anyway, we're looking forward to our next movie, Return of the Vampire. It does.
And it's actually weird to think about this, but this is our penultimate movie of the season.
Yeah.
And
but
the last
what makes
movie
this
of the
movie, if it's, I don't know, I haven't seen it, so I don't know if it's amazing or not. The thing that I've heard is that it's the return of, honestly, of Bela Lugosi. It's the return of, and he's playing a count.
Well, yeah, I guess you could say
no, it
so,
is.
But it's
he's playing a count.
It's
not Dracula, but it might as well be the way he acts. But it's basically, let's see, Bela Lugosi as Dracula again. Of course, we will see him again as his character Dracula when he plays him in Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, which we'll do, I think, I don't know if that's next season or whatever. I think it might be. But the other thing is, yeah.
And again, Bela Lugosi has sort of been dethroned, and this is sort of him clutching what levels left that he can attain, which in this case is probably a lot of B movies.
He does a lot of these little
so.
B movies, Monogram and Monarch and kind of, these lower. He just kind of does what he can at this point. And some people have they shoot up like a rocket and they come down really hard, and so I think both him and Lon Chaney would do that. Lon Chaney took a little bit longer to do it, but it happened. But that's it.
Yeah, though keep in mind he died
which
in
person?
56, remember?
Yes, he did. And he died
Bela
before he
Lugosi.
finished Plan 9 from Outer Space. So we'll have to see what they did to fix that.
So this is starting to get, into his later years of his life. You probably wouldn't know it, but, he was, I guess he was
he was addicted to methadone.
And honestly, what is
he was addicted,
what is it with
He was
with
addicted
us
to methadone,
talking
which is
about
like
old
a replacement for heroin or morphine. Yeah. And that's partially what got him.
Yeah. But it's
come
funny
on.
how much we've talked about old people, and I'm just I'm making note of that because me.
You are
as
nowhere.
a-
I'm closer
as a
to old
teenager,
than
as
I'm
a Gen
far
Z.
far closer to old than you are, and so I'll give you some tips.
But yeah, it's a bit hard to think about and correctly.
Well, are you gonna?
represent,
I'm not elderly, but I can give you
elderly
some
age,
of I can give you some of my opinions on that.
I mean, these movies are decades old, so I guess we've represented them fairly well. Tune in next time
Yes,
for Return
yep,
of the Vampire.
that's what's gonna
when the
happen.
Vampire returns. Yep.
That's all I know.
Yeah,
And
I'm not
William's gonna
incredible.
ask me
That's all I
questions
know.
like, "What's it like
That's-
being
that's
old,
all I
Dad?"
know.
Bye.
See you around. Thanks for listening to Cinematic Fantastic Podcast. Click here and here for some more excellent content. Hope you'll enjoy it. See you soon.